for me and Cummings on the quarterbacks. Ian, let's go to the Eagles, man. Big talk right now in Philadelphia is replacing future Hall of Fame tackle Lane Johnson. Now, Lane's going to return this year, but walk me through the tackles in this draft. Who do you like? Who do you think could be there at 23 if the Eagles did stay put, and maybe even a round 2 or a round 3 value? What do you make of the tackle position coming into the 2026 NFL draft?
Yeah, it's a really interesting group because I think a lot of the tackles are guys that we're looking at as potential tackle to guard converts, right? There aren't a lot of pure tackles that are going to garner early starting appeal in the NFL, right? But the class is very deep as far as interior line converts go. But if you're the Eagles, and I think the combine, it in a sense, it might have helped. It might have not, because Monroe Freeling for Georgia tested extremely well. 6'7", I think 315, over 34-inch arms, ran a 4.91 40-yard dash, had a low 1.7 10-yard split. Just absolutely insane explosion in athleticism numbers. And then you turn on the tape, and he's got the flexibility. He's got the power profile, the angle IQ, and the run game too. A little rudimentary in pass protection. But the point being, Monroe Freeling will probably not be there anymore. I think Caleb Lomu has a good chance of being off the board before the Eagles pick. I have mocked him to the Eagles before, but he tested very well. And combining that with Spencer Fano's arm length being 32 and 1/8 inches, that might flip those guys, right? So maybe you see Fano fall down the board a little bit, but that puts Spencer Fano in the conversation potentially. Right now, we know the Eagles have traditionally preferred length, right, and mass at the tackle position, and Spencer Fano might fall below their thresholds, being 6'5.5", 311, only 32-inch arms. But athletically, this guy is one of the best in the class. And I think in particular, too, a lot of the soft skills that you need to succeed at offensive line are there with him. You look at balance, you look at knee bend, hip flexibility, both to, transition laterally, but then also to siphon hand power from your hip transitions. I think Spencer Fano is very proficient in that area. So if the Eagles go beyond their thresholds, right, Spencer Fano could be an option late in round 1. I think that, the measurements could kick him down a little bit, but again, he's got that lateral mobility. I think he has the athleticism. I think he has the upper lower synergy, all of those things to compensate for that lacking arm length profile. Now, if they want to go with pure measurables, Caden Proctor is also here, and he's a mountain of a man. I think he measured in still over 350 pounds after trimming down for the combine, which is just certifiably insane. Again, the proportional length is not elite. It's around 33.5, I believe. And also he's a little stiff as an athlete. I've always viewed him as probably a likely convert inside to guard long-term, but I will concede later in the year, he started to kind of take a trend upward with his technique and operational utility a little bit more, right? And you're still working with a guy who, for his size, has really good knee bend, really good leverage acquisition. The anchor strength can be suffocating when he gets his hands on you. And I do think he's a very, very good an asset in the run game where he can move guys off the line and get really easy displacement energy too. So Caden Proctor is right there too. But Blake Miller, I'd say from Clemson, is another really compelling
that's who
player.
I was going to ask you.
He's got the length, he's got the height, the lean mass, and again, the athleticism just pops, man. He tested exactly the way you expected him to. Mid-30s vertical, just over a 5 in the 40, but a really good 10-yard split too. And on film, man, I mean, he was. You're looking at a guy who started, I think, 54 games in his collegiate career. He was a 4-year starter. So that kind of dependability is really valuable. And I think the earlier years of his career were a little rocky, but 2025 was his best season. And you saw a guy who really improved his again, leverage acquisition. I think for his size, his really good knee bend, gets that pad level attuned really well for his size. And then his anchor strength was probably my biggest concern entering 2025. I do still think there are lapses with his anchor where he can do a little bit better job fully swiveling and absorbing power outputs. But I do think he improved there. He's got really good upper lower synergy. He flashes really good hand usage. And in the run game, he is one of the rangiest blockers in the class that you'll see. I mean, just time and time again, he's pulling from the C gap to the opposite C gap and reaching his landmark in a timely manner. He's climbing to the second level and reaching his landmarks and just driving through linebackers too. So, a really fun physical talent who also has the experience and the baseline level of operational utility in both phases that you want. So I like Blake Miller a lot. I believe he's just outside my top 32. So a really good player and a guy that I like a lot. One more player that I'll bring up in this offensive tackle breakdown is Max Ihanashor from Arizona State.
I'm glad you brought him up because I wanted to know how to pronounce his name. Say it one more time, Ian.
Max Ihanashor. Yep.
Nice.
So he's originally from Nigeria. He didn't play high school football at all. He played basketball and soccer, I believe, and then went the JUCO route, obviously not having that football experience, but, came to Arizona State and immediately started to get into the starting rotation. evaluation. And this past year, he put up one of the best performances against that Texas Tech duo, Romello Height and David Bailey, right? With Ihanachor, you're looking at a guy who is probably going to be an older rookie. He might be as old as 24, 25, right? So there aren't a lot of definitive age valuations out there. So if the Eagles have a strict age threshold, that's where they might prefer a younger player like a Fano if he falls, or Miller probably being a little bit younger, right? But I think Ihanachor, if you're willing to work with, again, it's not a good combination to be an older prospect, but also have a relative lack of experience at the tackle position, because you have a shorter runway, right? He's going to be 30 a little bit quicker, and there's still some work to do with the stunt vision and the processing of ancillary peripheral threats, right? So I think if he's one-on-one on an island, I do think he has the matching ability. The athleticism pops with this guy, and he's got almost 34-inch arms, over 320 pounds, really big dude who carries the weight well. At the Senior Bowl, that was something that popped right away in one-on-ones. Just he moves very well laterally. That can be to his detriment sometimes, where he'll overset a little bit and give an inside counter lane. But again, at the Senior Bowl, I think you saw his propensity for fast learning, because his first day was a little rough, and you'd heard people talking about, hey, look at this guy, Max Ihanachor, don't look away from him because he might be a first-round riser after the Senior Bowl. After the first day, people were kind of iffy on that. Like, he was a little inconsistent, but he came back on day 2 and day 3 and just built every single day. And by day 3, he was one of the best offensive linemen there. He was, giving a lot better precision and timing with his strikes. He was being patient with his redirections and his angle positioning. And he was just suffocating, just latching and just erasing any power when he got his hands on guys. So the power profile, the size, the athleticism, all of those things are there with him. And I also think he grew as a run blocker this past year, showing off better ability to get in space and fully drive through space defenders too. So he's trending up. The runway is a little bit shorter with him, and he's a little bit raw in terms of processing stunts, right? I think his angle IQ is really good in the run game, but in the NFL, diverse stunt looks, guys coming from the second level, slanting rushes from the interior positions. Like, you need to be aware of all those different things. And I think he's a little bit more raw there than some of the other guys like Blake Miller or the Utah duo. But if you're willing to go through that 1 to 2 year runway, kind of getting more reps against those different types of looks, he's got the athleticism, he's got the size, he's got the really clean pass sets and pass protection, and the profile is conducive to people moving in the run game too. So another guy that I like a lot.
All right. That's a hell of a breakdown. I do want people to focus on Blake Miller. Remember, the Eagles are moving away from Jeff Stoutland. They're going to more of a wide zone stretch scheme. So, C gap to C gap, you're saying keep an eye on that kid, because I think he might be a fit for the new Eagles philosophy, at least projected. We talked about tight end a little bit, and we're going heavy offense because the Eagles haven't drafted offense in a long time. So everybody thinks they're going to go offense. So we'll put Sadiq aside. They got to rebuild. If they don't get Dallas Goedert back, they have to rebuild the entire tight end room. So I want 2 things from you, and I want the best sort of dual move, modern move tight ends in this draft after Sadiq. And then I want just the true Y back, the inline guy who can block, because they need somebody who can set the edge.
For sure. And my philosophy, my grading scale, I changed it this year at the tight end position. I heavily inflated the blocking score, right? Because I think blocking and your ability to block in line, like you said, can dictate which personnel packages you can be utilized in, right? But that said, if you need a flanker, if you need a really good receiving threat, you got to look at Eli Stowers. I think, jumping a 45-inch vertical at the NFL Combine at his side, just insane. He
had a bigger relative athletic score, than Sadiq. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's really representative of the fact, like, in the receiving phase, this dude is explosive, and it shows on film too. Really easy accelerator, glider up seams, and he's got pretty good redirection ability and angle freedom on cuts too. His yard per route run figure, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was better than a lot of receivers in this class. So looking at his pure efficiency as a receiving threat, both being able to separate and splice through zones with that explosive athleticism and long speed, but then also also being able to box guys out and make plays at the catch point with that taller, leaner frame. All of those things show up with him on film. And I think, it absolutely comes at the cost. There's a trade-off for the blocking ability. Eli Stowers was drastically underutilized as a blocker. And I think because of that, when he is on the field and blocking reps, it's predominantly, out in the slot as a big slot. You barely see any inline reps with him or working on the move off motions too. But even then, there's not a lot of power generation. There's not a lot of proper leveraging or drive. So you really are working from the ground up in terms of blocking. But if you're willing to accept that trade-off, he's a really good receiving threat with that, again, elite explosive upside. And I think he can be an X factor. I look at Aronde Gatson II, who was really productive as a rookie for the Chargers, in mainly in that flanker role, where he was working mostly in space as kind of a big slot weapon. That's probably the vision that you're going to have for Stowers too, right? I think Michael Trigg from Baylor is another one who kind of fits that mold. Trigg is a lot longer. He measured in with over 34-inch arms. I don't think he's quite the athlete that Stowers is from a functional sense. So again, Trigg he's explosive up seams, but he's not quite as quick-footed. He's not quite as good on direction changes. But again, you are working with a guy who's athletic enough to, again, get up seams, box guys out, and then the 34-inch arms really help with the catch radius, the playmaking ability. He's got some crazy catches on tape. I think Stowers within the receiving tight end mold is probably a little bit more translatable, but those are two as the pure receiving threats. Now, as the Y who can play inline, some of the more complete players in the class, I'll throw Dallin Bentley from Utah in that conversation, and he tested very well from the Utes. I think it was around 6'4", mid 250s. His playing weight is probably 260, over 33-inch arms. Ran a low 4.6, had a 35-inch vertical. And on film, this is a guy, and I think he tested fairly well in the agilities and the shuttle as well. But on film, Dallin Bentley, and I think he gets really overlooked in this tight end class. You don't hear a ton of people talking about him, but his play style is very, very complete in both phases of the game. As a route runner, I think he's one of the best at cutting tight angles, and he's got a true route tree. I mean, this is not a guy who's just running, seam routes, right? He can run in breakers and digs and slants, and he's got some corner routes in his arsenal too, right? And he can get out in the flats and make himself available for run after catch with that rumbling explosion. But then as a blocker too, he's well leveraged. He can get under guys in the pad level battle, and he can drive through with that lower body action. So just so many things, so many boxes that Dallin Bentley checks. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's my tight end 3 right now. Oscar Delp from Georgia is another one within that conversation. And actually a really interesting tidbit that came out at the combine, I believe he was playing it was a foot injury. It was maybe a bone fracture in his foot for most of the 2025 season. Yeah. And you watch him on film, he's one of the most explosive athletes in this tight end class, even with that. So, toughness, right? Grit, but also just a really good seam stretcher, really good athlete. There is some inconsistency with the hands at the catch point sometimes, but again, I think the body control is definitely there. I think the catch point composure, the ability to make high difficulty adjustments, right, and box guys out is there. He's got the run after catch ability with that combined explosion and that forward churning contact balance. And then he's also one of the best blockers in the class. You can play him in line, you can play him out wide if you need him to. He's, again, for a guy who's 6'5", really good at acquiring leverage, getting his base beneath him, and kind of weaponizing that explosive energy to just really reset the contact point. And then even as a pass protector, there were reps where Georgia was passing the ball, but they couldn't pass up Delp's value as a pass protector. So they just left him in as a 6th offensive lineman, and he would go to work. So again, I think the 2-phase value with Dallin Bentley, with Oscar Delp is there. I'll throw in Eli Raridan from Notre Dame, another really good player, not quite as fluid, a little bit stiffer in the hips, a little bit more of your monolithic seam stretcher who's not going to be too, spry on redirections. But again, a guy who can make body control adjustments, who's a really good blocker at the point of attack, and has the length that you want to forklift guys out of gaps too. So the list goes on. There's a few others. Justin Joly is an intriguing receiving option as well. And I think Joly, if you're looking for a guy who gives good receiving value, but also at least makes a good effort as a blocker, I think he's better as a blocker than Stowers and Trigg. But also I think Joly isn't quite as explosive or fluid, right? So there's trade-offs everywhere you go. But I think this tight end class is really strong. And you go down the list too. There were some guys who tested really well. Matthew Hibner from SMU. If you're looking for more of a receiving threat, he was standing out at the Senior Bowl and then tested very well at the NFL Combine. So you have depth. You have layers of options in this class. If you can't get a guy in round 2 or 3, day 3, there might still be options for you there. So it's going to be exciting to see. I think the Eagles could be, well versed to double dip if they wanted to, because there is a lot of talent available.
Yeah, it seems like it. Ian, one position, we talked a lot of offense offense there. Last one for me here. The one thing that I think could happen here that could flip the Eagles' draft plans on their head would be if somebody gives Jalen Phillips massive money in free agency. And then I think that edge rusher spot comes into play, maybe even as their number 1 overall pick at 23 overall. Just your quick thought on the edge rusher class and who could be the value there at 23 overall, because I do think that's the thing. If Phillips is gone, I think that throws the Eagles' draft plans on their head, and they could end up with another defensive pick in round 1. What do you see at that spot?
Yeah, round 1, it's really interesting, right? Because you've got David Bailey, you've got Arvell Reese, you've got Ruben Band. We can basically assume that none of those guys are going to be there at 23, right? I think the next guy up is Keldrick Falk, right? I don't know if he's a schematic fit for Vic Fangio, who likes to use guys from wider alignments. I think Keldrick Falk definitely has the build-up acceleration and the power profile if you want to use him there. But I've been looking at him more as kind of an even front defensive end who could rotate inside the 3-tech and 4-eye in a John Franklin Myers role potentially, right? So I don't know if he's that fit from the outside perspective, right? But if they have the vision for him, they could. I don't know if he's a perfect fit. Akeem Mesidor from Miami is one that could be a really good fit if you're willing to look past the age. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, but I think for the Eagles in particular, who are trying to extend this immediate contention window, right? Akeem Mesidor is a player who I think fits that to a T, right? Right away, he's going to give you a pass rush catalyst. His arms are a little bit under 33 inches, but he's still a really explosive player with good finesse and lateral agility and compact power for his size. The pass rush arsenal is there, and he's a really quality and operationally sound, technically sound, high motor run defender too. So the floor is extremely high with Akeem Mesidor. The age is a concern, but if the Eagles are willing to look past that immediate contributor off the edge who allows you to not think about that for a little bit, I think TJ Parker is an intriguing player, more of an early round 2 guy for me. So it would be a reach in round 1. I don't think he's an elite physical talent. I think the combine showed that, but again, kind of a well-rounded, well-leveraged player with good compact mass, good proportional length. And, again, he's not going to be elite in any area. His pass rush bag can be a little inconsistent, but it's definitely there. We've seen him win with forklift swims, with power, with bull rushes, with club rips, right? So he's got all of that, but the consistency is still coming along. The last one that I'll bring up is Malachi Lawrence from UCF. And the round 1 was not a conversation for him before the combine. I still think he's probably more of a round 2 guy, but the way that he tested, I think it was a low 4.5 40-yard dash, over 40-inch vertical at around 6'4", over 250 with over 33-inch arms. He's got all of the physical components that you would want. He was one of the best edge rushers at the Shrine Bowl, showing off that lateral explosion and that ability to offset and then capitalize with that quick acceleration upfield. And then even though he doesn't consistently channel the power that you would expect with his length and mass, that those components are there. And then he's explosive, agile. He's got a working pass rush arsenal, right? And I think he's trending up as a run defender. I think he can get moved off his spot a little bit too easily. But again, you're banking on that pass rush upside to carry you from wider alignments there. So I think those are the names that come off the board for the Eagles. They'll have options, but it's going to be tricky when those top guys are already gone.
All right, Ian Cummings, one of the best in the business, if you heard that, delivers again. Make sure you follow him on X at IC_draft. He's the guy in charge of the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. So go over there, profootballnetwork.com/mock draft. Also, one of the guys, I don't say this often, but Ian's one of the only guys in the world that's got a bigger vocabulary than me. So I got a big ego, but he's got a bigger vocabulary. But we're going to tap into you again, Ian. I always love talking to you. One of the best in the business when it comes to the NFL draft. And keep an eye because I'm going to be texting you. We need more of your expertise.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Always